What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Celtics Collective podcast. I'm Maddie Kroll, and I'm joined with Adam Taylor and Sean Devney. What's up, guys?
I'm loving
Hi,
life.
Maddie. How are you? Hi, guys.
Living
Sean,
life. What does living life mean, Adam?
means I wake up, I smile, I spend my day smiling, and I get to talk to people about basketball all day. Then I go to bed and read about basketball and smile some more.
I don't know about you, but I find it
For
hard
me,
to believe that Adam wakes up and smiles.
no. He's always like that. I wake up grumpy, and I have to message Adam very early in the morning for me, and not so early morning for him, and that's how I wind up feeling better.
So I'm a crazy morning person. Once I'm awake, I'm up, and I'm not. Once I'm up, I'm in a great mood to start the day, and as long as nothing happens within that first 45 minutes to put a dampener on that mood, I stay happy all day.
I am not. I'm not happy until I have food. Like, I have to wake up, eat. I need nobody to talk to me for the first at least 30 minutes I'm awake for me to be a good person. And then once I eat a little bit, I can chill.
See, I can't eat for hours after I wake up. So today I woke up at 6 a.m. I didn't start eating until around about noon.
That's an absolutely not for me. I would have no friends.
See, I have no friends. I'm good.
Yeah, there it is. There it is. We finally got to the bottom of it.
Yeah, I don't need them. They don't talk about basketball here, so they're not friends.
Well, we'll go ahead and feed the people what they're here for, the basketball information. Today, we are talking about the latest 2K, EuroBasket, and then we're going to play a fun game called Be Brad Stevens.
I've always wanted to be Brad Stevens.
All right.
I was really expecting Adam to just be crazy excited about this.
Oh, I am, but I'm holding it in because I don't want to give it away my excitement too early.
You don't want to scare anyone, right?
Yeah, I'm very excited.
A lot of NBA players are not excited about the 2K23 ratings that came out. We'll kind of dive into everything, but Giannis was a 97. He tops the league. Gilbert Arenas had a problem with that, or we expect to have a problem with that. Kevin Durant has a 96. He's tied for second. And as always, he's never happy. He called it laughable. And Klay Thompson was not happy, which I'm kind of on Klay Thompson's side on that. I have to ask, why do you guys think the players care about this so much? I know from an NFL standpoint, a lot of those rating type things can go into their contract negotiations for the next year. Is it the same thing for the NBA, or do they just want to gripe about something?
No, and woe be to the team that factors in their NBA 2K3 ratings into contract negotiatings. That's not something that happens with these guys, but it is a game that they all play, and it's a game that they all grew up playing. And so I think that it's something that does resonate with these guys. I always sit back and say, if I'm Kevin Durant and Giannis is a 97 and I'm a 96, am I that upset? He was, and so it's always amazing to me how much these guys do care about this thing. But at the same time, it is something, like I say, that they all grew up playing, that they all are very much cognizant of that. As much as you might see yourself in the NBA Finals and the NBA playoffs and the All-Star game, whatever, when you see yourself on NBA 2K3, that's when you know that, okay, I've arrived as an NBA player. So that goes a lot into this, as much as anything else. It's not something that really matters, but to them it matters just because it's sort of a childhood thing, and then they get to tweet about it when the things finally come out.
And I mean, for me, it's like you spend your entire life working your butt off to get to this point to be featured in a game. And then the last thing you want is for your character to suck, right? So if I'm like Jaylen Brown, who got an 87, he doesn't suck, but by no means are you choosing to choose him for a pro-am game where you're choosing pro players. You're going to be like, man, I want Giannis, I want Tatum, I want Durant. Jaylen Brown sitting there feeling some type of way, like, I was the most dominant player on the Celtics in the NBA Finals, yet I'm barely scratching the top 15 in the game. So it's little things like that that would start to kind of eat away at me personally. Like, hey, and I think a lot of it does come down to having a bit of respect on people's names. Everybody believes they're a little bit better at something than what they really are. Just look at me. But in general, I think that a lot of it is just bragging rights between each other. You know, like, oh, dude, you're in the locker room. You're like, man, I'm the second best player on 2K. And you know, all of a sudden, they redo the ratings in a month, and you might be the third best player in the locker room. And that's the other side of things, right? Like, the marketing ploy from 2K is exceptional. You rank everybody a little bit lower, so you have scope to improve their ratings throughout the season. You don't want to give everyone their top rating now, because when you do the updates, there's nothing really changing except for glitches. So you slowly increase their ratings over the season. And it also, this discourse that you get from the players that are feeling that type of way, when they're tweeting out about it, that's free press. It's free promotion. So it's the marketing ploy from 2K is genius, and I understand it. But if I'm like Kevin Durant and I'm a 96, I'm like, dude, what more do you want, man? Really? like you're old now.
Afraid.
Kevin Durant just wants to gripe. Let's be honest. I should clarify though, like
I think one thing to make a point about the video games in general is that, you know, when we think about, like, when I was growing up, you know, NFL films was the thing. Like, you know, you would watch these old NFL films about the Ice Bowl, about you know, Super Bowl III, and you know, you go right on through and you'd watch all these NFL films. And that's kind of what 2K, that's what video games are now, and especially 2K for NBA players, is that it's like the NFL. It's, you know, we don't really get our media so much through the traditional means that you get your media as much through video games as through movies. And so all these old movies that used to, you know, tell these great, you know, stories, the history of the game, that's all coming now through things like these video games. So it does have some importance in terms of that.
And let's be honest, last season towards the end in the My Team, you know, where you collect the cards and you have the different versions of the players. So you have Ruby, Sapphire, Pink Diamond, Amphius, whatever. Last season they released a 99 overall version of Taco 4. Now, if we're going to be doing that, then I'm not taking anything seriously. Like, the whole thing, like, we're talking computer generated Taco 4 at the same level as Michael Jordan. Are you crazy? Like, even if that was the best player on the game, I'm not going out my way to acquire that card, because that is just ludicrous.
You have to draw the line somewhere.
Yeah, and that's it.
I should clarify, whenever I was talking about these scores earlier, I was drawing them back to the NFL using the PFF stats that the Madden game uses to give those scores. So it's a little bit different, but still the same. Adam, you mentioned Jaylen Brown. He was upset with his 87. He tweeted out, "Stop playing with me." What do you guys think about that? Do you think 87's that bad for Jaylen Brown? Or do you think it's fair?
Learn to dribble the basketball at speed and you might get closer to a 90. Like, because everything else he does great. He's a great catcher. Like, I've always called him a play finisher, and I don't know if you agree with me here, Sean. And the way I define that is, you finish plays. You're not the wing creator that Jayson Tatum is, because you don't have the handle that Jayson Tatum does. In a half-court setting, Brown can be prone to over-dribbling. In the full-court setting, his handle's a little bit loose. It's easy to poke away. So what you do with Jaylen Brown is you ask him to attack off the catch by catching and ripping through to attack the basket, or catching and shooting. And that is where I get that play finisher from. You're asking him specifically to finish the play, and he's exceptional there. But there's a limit on how impactful you can be overall as that guy, right? Like, he's a great defender, great wing stopper, excellent at switching, can finish plays for you, but you don't really want him handling the rock too much. And that takes away a little bit from what he can give the Celtics, because that's the difference at the moment between him and Tatum, is you can give Tatum the ball, ask him to initiate the offense, ask him to run pick and rolls. And when you saw Brown do that while Tatum was injured last season, it was without swearing, it was really, really bad. And it started to get better over time, and it will continue to improve. But it's worth remembering that Brown's entering his 7th year in the league. At some point, the version we're seeing is the version we've got.
Yeah, and that's a fair point. And you know, he is, if you asked everybody to rate Jaylen Brown and where he is in the NBA, where he is in the NBA pecking order, you would get, varied, widely varied opinions. You'd say, well, he's a top 50 player for sure. And then other people would say, he's probably right around 20. And you could make a case for a lot. I was looking at the NBA.com ratings of players coming into this year. And right now they've got Jaylen Brown at 42. Which is, to me, is crazy. He's not 42. I mean, he's
No.
That's below Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who I like as a player, but I'll take Jaylen Brown every day. But if you look at the NBA 2K ratings, he's 28th, which to me is I'm a little more comfortable with that. He's right on par with Bradley Beal and Bam Adebayo, and I'm okay with that. I'd probably take at this point, with injuries. I'd probably take Jaylen Brown over Bradley Beal, to be honest with you. But, I think that's probably a more comfortable. But if you ask, 10 scouts, 10 coaches, 10 whatever, you're going to get 10, wildly different opinions of Jaylen Brown. And I think that goes to what you're saying, Adam, in that, there's certain improvements that he just hasn't made at this point. He's improved some of the things he's already good at. He probably has to improve some of the things he's not so good at.
Yeah, and he came into the league as a raw, explosive wing prospect. Like the development he's made from coming in from Cal all the way through till now is he's a completely different player. And being an elite play finisher isn't an insult. There's very few people in the league that can be that type of play finisher, somebody you can rely on and put the ball in their hands and be like, yo, we're going to swing this rock to you after we come off a screen. You're going to rip through, you're going to attack, and we're going to trust you because you've got the mid-range shot, you've got the catch and shoot corner three. We're very comfortable with you scoring off the dribble. We're very comfortable with you pulling up off the dribble. The only thing we're not comfortable with is if now the defense slows you down and you've got to look to initiate something. That's where we start to be like, that development just hasn't come yet. And we're not sure how many more years of development you've got until we're like, right, this is who Jaylen Brown is as a player. Because eventually that's going to be something we need to accept. If that's year 7 or year 8, then fine. But by the time he's in year 9, if he's still not that wing creator, then it's not going to happen. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not a knock on him at all.
Yeah, I think, Sean, you made a good point that the people who are reviewing these statistics and coming up with these numbers, they all prioritize different skills or different talents in a different way than we all do, right? That's just the beauty of being human. Jayson Tatum was a 93. He was 8th overall in the game, which is tied with Jamorant and Jimmy Butler. I think that he's better than both of those guys. What do you guys think?
Who was he tied with? Jimmy Butler and who?
Jamorant.
And Ja.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's better than Ja at the moment, definitely. I think that
I'd put him better as Jimmy Butler too, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I was going to get to. Yeah, he's definitely. Jimmy's just not Jimmy anymore. If we're being honest, he's not that same guy. And even then, I'd still be questioning it. Tatum is a complete package at this point. He's the best scorer on the floor in almost every game he plays, period. He's one of the better wing defenders in the league. His rebounding has improved tremendously. His off-ball work has improved. And now you can put the ball in his hand, and Boston ran what I'd say 60% of their offensive possessions through Tatum as the initiator when he was on the floor. There's not many guys in the league where you're going to be like, he's definitively better than Jayson Tatum. And Ja and Jimmy Butler, in my opinion, are a tier below.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I mean, the 96 rating right now is crowded. It's LeBron James. It's you start with it's obviously Kevin Durant, who we mentioned. You start with Giannis at 97, and then you've got that second level of players. Then they've got Luka at 95, and Kawhi Leonard at 94, and then Jayson Tatum at 93. To me, again, considering injuries, I'd put Jayson Tatum on par with Kawhi Leonard. I don't think Kawhi Leonard is the same defender that he was, at his peak. As he's gotten better offensively, his defense has become, very good, obviously, but not elite level necessarily the way it was. And I'd probably put Jayson Tatum right now on par with Luka Doncic. And I think Luka Doncic, what we see from him with the Mavericks and what he does for them, and with the team that doesn't have any other real stars, and even with Jaylen Brunson, Jaylen Brunson wasn't really a star player. Luka Doncic is able to dominate the ball, able to dominate the rebounding, able to dominate the assists. He dominates so much statistically that I think he gets a little bit higher. He's viewed higher than what he actually deserves to be. I would probably take Jayson Tatum right now. If maybe in 5 years I'd rather have Luka Doncic, but right now I'd take Jayson Tatum. So Tatum at a 93 and Luka at a 95. I'd probably be comfortable with having Tatum up at a 95 there.
So the only thing I'd switch, like if I could take one aspect of Luka's game and do a Dr. Frankenstein and take it and pull it into Tatum, would be Luka's mentality. I think Luka is programmed more as a winning guy than what Tatum is. I think Tatum's a winning guy within a team structure, and that's perfect for a team-based game, right? But when you're the man, when you're, as the kids are saying now, when you're him, and I feel old boy saying as the kids are saying now, you want Luka's mentality of, right, I'm going to take this game by the scruff of the neck and I'm not going to let us lose. Now, if Tatum had that mentality, and there's a chance that he will in the coming season after falling short in the finals, we'll have to wait and see. But if he had Luka's mentality, he'd be top 2, top 3 guys in the league right now. Like, it'd be unquestionable.
I think a lot of that just comes with maturity too, though, right?
I mean,
he's still young
in
the game, but he's still young in the game. Luka had to grow up a lot faster.
Yeah. Luka was doing this when he was 15, 16 years old, unbelievably. But yeah, he was.
He was cooking fools in Spain.
Yeah.
Everybody. Do you know how upset I am? I didn't fly over to Madrid to watch him play while tickets were cheap. And that's cost me
regrets.
It's like I should go and see Wembanyama over in France, because
you might regret that.
Yeah, I should do. I might do.
Well, let's talk about Grant Williams, our last one. He was a 77. He tweeted out, stay disrespecting me. Wow, I can't talk today. He actually tweeted out, stay disrespecting me. What do you guys think about this? He was below Gallinari and Derek White, who were at 78.
Do you want to take this one, Sean?
Yeah, I looked at it in terms of his draft class, where he was tied with Matisse Thybulle of Philadelphia. He's obviously a very good defensive player, but can't hit the side of a barn with the ball. So I'd much rather have Grant Williams than Matisse Thybulle and Daniel Gafford, who is just another Washington center who puts up some numbers because he's getting some playing time and somebody's got to grab the rebounds and put in the putbacks. So, Daniel Gafford's a fine player, don't get me wrong, but, to put him in the same category, to put him at the same level as Grant Williams and what we saw Grant Williams do on big stages throughout the course of the year and how he got better, really from last year to this year and then during the year. I mean, he made great strides. There's no question about that. For a guy to be able to be the kind of 3-and-D player that Grant Williams is, for him to be that low, I of all the people who say they were disrespected, I think I might take Grant Williams as the most in terms of these ratings.
Yeah, if I'm Grant Williams, I'm very, very upset. Like I'm cease and desist orders are being issued tomorrow.
See you in small claims court.
Yeah, like I'm expecting this to be changed instantly. Look, if you look, you came into the season, he showed an improved 3-point shot. He'd lost some weight, so he's far more mobile around the perimeter, which was the issue that kind of cost him as a sophomore, because he was being played at the 4 more but couldn't really stay in front of guys or keep up with them. He addressed his 2 biggest needs. He came into the season, started well, and then continued to improve. And when Romeo Langford was traded in February, Grant Williams kind of adjusted and started driving out of the corners the same way Romeo was having success. And that was kind of like, right, I know that I now hold gravity as a corner 3-point shooter, so I'm going to wait for the defense to close out on me. Now I'm going to put the ball on the floor, drive into the post, because I'm a solid post player myself and I can pass a little bit out of there. And he started to add a whole new dimension to his game. Now, obviously, once the playoffs comes, it's not time to start working on your game. Stick to what you're good at. But over the offseason and starting next year, I wouldn't be shocked if we saw Grant attacking those closeouts more. And when you look at Gallinari, who's above him, who was awful defensively last year across the board, especially at the 5, is nothing more than really a catch and shoot guy at this point in his career. To be ranked higher than Grant Williams is absolutely atrocious. Like, somebody somewhere needs to have to answer to someone, and I'd like that interview recorded and put on the internet. Derek White, I can see a little bit, but again, Derek White is very good defensively, and he's, as I said, he's great off ball. But as Sean noted in the last episode, his offense is lacking. Overall, yeah, I feel sorry for Grant Williams, and I'm ready to go to bat for him over this.
Yeah, no, and it makes you wonder, like, how they calculate defense into all this, like, you know, and it's one of the toughest things to do for, I think, fans and media people to like put a number on how good a player is defensively. But certainly this does not seem to do it. And if I could just say, guys, as full disclosure, I'm actually in NBA 2K3. So if you play it, you might see me pop up on Twitter as one of media personalities.
That humble brag.
Criticize your game. Yeah, I have a friend who like will text me randomly because he plays NBA 2K all the time, and he'll text me and he'll say, you know, why are you so mean on Twitter? I was like, what are you talking about? I haven't tweeted in a week. And he'll say, like, no, on 2K3, you're always saying negative things on your tweet. Oh, well, geez, I'm sorry, I don't know.
So you're the hater.
I'm the hater. Yeah,
2K hater.
They send me like a contract every year that I have to sign. And again, full disclosure, they don't pay me a dime. They just make me sign a piece of paper, and then I guess I pop up.
Send them an email, say I'll do it, and you can put whatever you want coming out.
There you go. I will
just
do
for
that.
a day.
For Celtics coverage, they should have you on there.
I just want a screenshot, and then I'm done. Like, you can literally a 30-second appearance, and I'm fine. That's awesome. What a humble brag.
I mean, it's amazing.
That was a humble brag. Yeah, sorry about that, but I'll pass that along. And
don't be sorry.
It's okay. I'll pass your information along, Adam.
Tell them I love them.
All right.
Tell them I love them. Apparently, you love Grant Williams too. You're now getting him tatted on your body.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, I told you, no. We need to really stipulate the rules here. First of all, I need to see the Ninja Turtle design and make sure it's aesthetically pleasing, and it wasn't drawn by an 8-year-old that's, you know, been told they were good and were given an etch a sketch and told this will be a tattoo. But if it's aesthetically
so I cannot draw it. Got it.
Yeah, no, you may not. But if it's aesthetically pleasing, if it works, if the Grant Williams likeness is there with the Ninja Turtle likeness, yeah, I'm getting it done. no lie. And if you want, we can even film the tattoo being done and post it as content. I'm fine with that.
Maybe 2K will add in like a crazy fan portion, and you could be the star of that. And then your tattoo will be like
I've
front and
always
center.
been against going on anything that labels me as a fan.
Okay.
Because that's just
you got that, Sean.
Putting you in a complete.
I got it.
Don't pigeonhole our man.
Yeah, it just puts you in a different lane that I don't want to be a part of. There's people that are happy being in that lane, but I am not Clipper Darrell, and I don't intend to be, because I think he's great at being a super fan, but I am not that energetic.
Yeah, no, you're also a little bit more negative. I don't know that you could.
I am not negative. I'm honest.
Awful defensive there.
I'm honest.
You're not as big of a negative Ned as Sean is, apparently.
Well, this is true.
I'll take
per
that.
his tweet.
That's what my friends tell me.
Virtual you hasn't had his coffee yet. That's all it is, buddy.
Well, let's get into our next segment. That's my yam, which Sean named, and I think it's amazing. That's such a dad way to name a topic too.
I'm a dad of a 5-year-old, and I've been perfecting my dad joke game. So that's my yam. Is something that I thought was brilliant when I thought of it.
It's absolutely brilliant. We love a good pun. Israel was eliminated in EuroBasket last week, but Yam Madar, that's my yam. Maybe we should get shirts that say that.
Merch
was one of the better players in the tournament. We know that the Celtics have a bit of a logjam going on right now at point guard. JD Davidson's in the G League. Madar turns 22 in December. Is there a place for him or a future with him? Will he ever fit into the Celtics plans?
Yeah, it's hard to see where, because I think the Celtics, one thing that they've done with their point guard crew is to bring together 3 guys who are all in about the same age range, who are just a little bit older than Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown, but are still in sort of that same bracket where you've got Marcus Smart at 28, Brogdon at 29, Derek White at 28. And I think they see that as a core that they can kind of have going forward. And probably not have to overpay any of those guys, even Marcus, as good as he's been. That they can probably afford to keep all three of those guys and have that as sort of their primary guard rotation going forward. And with that being the case, then you're really talking about, okay, who's going to be the fourth, who's going to be the fifth. Pritchard right now at 24, we're talking about whether he's going to get minutes, and he's a guy who's proven himself, particularly as a shooter. So, it's hard to see now you're talking about Jan Madar as the fifth point guard. And again, for a guy who's 22 and really wants to test himself in the NBA, he's been eager to do it. He's come to Summer League. He's really been a guy who wants to play in the NBA. I think that he's probably going to get impatient. Now, this could go to some of the things that they have with the traded player exception. You could trade his rights as part of a deal, and that could be something I think that going forward that the Celtics would have to look at, because he's played very, very well in Europe. He's really made his mark. He's probably done all he needs to do there to show he can play in the NBA. But I don't see any room for him with the Celtics at this point.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that over the throughout last season, he was playing under Obradovic. I think that's how you pronounce the name. Who's arguably the greatest European coach ever, or at least one of the greatest European coaches. So he's had great tutelage. He's moved from Israel over to Serbia so he can play against a higher level of competition, playing a higher level of EuroLeague. Now he's showing it on an international stage at the FIBA tournament. But I agree. At this moment in time, I don't see a path forward for Madar with Boston. If you ask me who's the better guard out of Madar and out of Pritchard, granted, I haven't seen as much of Madar as what I have of Pritchard, but I do feel like Pritchard is more NBA ready right now. But he's going into his third year in the NBA, so he's meant to be more NBA ready. So moving Madar to a team like, I don't know, someone who's like Utah, that's tearing everything down, where there's going to be opportunities, or moving into Sacramento, who will most likely be tearing things down again in a year, is always
every year.
Yeah, exactly. Is always going to be a good option, not just for you, but by doing right for the player as well. Because other European players will take notice of that and be like, right, they recognized there was no path forward for him, and they tried to move him to a situation that not only worked for the team, obviously with whatever's coming back, but also put him in a better situation to have a direct path to some NBA minutes. And they've already got Juan Begarin, who's a bigger guy that's probably a better prospect, and I know he's more of a wing than a guard, but you can see Begarin making that NBA leap with Boston far quicker than Madar. So if I was Madar, I'd be like, hey, can you either renounce my rights so I can go and find somewhere to go myself, or if a trade pops up, can you just kind of add those rights in? I agree with Sean. I think he's spot on.
Is there a spot you think he could play it well in? Either of you? A place?
Yeah, I mean, he would need minutes. A lot of this comes down to can you find the right role? I mean, there's been a lot of great European point guards who, when they come to the U.S., just don't play well in the NBA. They just aren't. Marko Jaric is one that I always thought was going to be a really good NBA point guard, and he flamed out with the Clippers and the Grizzlies and a couple of teams. And Teodosic, who's one of the great European point guards as well, went to the Clippers and just never really found the right spot. But then you get guys like Pablo Prigioni or Campazzo from Denver, who do find the right spot and are able to thrive. So he just needs to find, the right kind of spot, that backup kind of role, that the team that needs 20 minutes, maybe 15 to 20 minutes without you turning over the ball a lot and you're being able to hit some threes. That's one of the things about Madar that he's done, is been able to hit threes. So if he can find a place that sort of values that and where he can fit in with that, then he could have a role in the NBA. But it's tough to find, and we've seen a lot of very, very good point guards come over from Europe and just not be able to find that role.
Yeah, the adaptation from EuroBasketball to NBA basketball is drastic because it's such a different type of game. You know, EuroLeague is a little bit slower, more half-court based, a lot of more. Well, every league's pick and roll heavy, but it's just they're float. It's a lot more X's and O's based in terms of coaches are calling.
More physical too. Yeah.
Coaches are calling sets far more often. Very physical. There's a lot of subtle differences. So when some of these Euro guys come over, not all of them can adapt because they're ingrained in playing in that EuroLeague style of way. It's what they've been taught since they could walk. The same way as NBA guys, not all of them that go to Europe find success. Some of them struggle because they have that reverse adaptation. And again, they've been trained to play NBA type basketball from as soon as they could walk. So I can see Madar coming over. Whether he's successful or not will have multiple mitigating factors, and a lot of them will be out of his control. But a team like Oklahoma makes sense to me. They've got a big European presence throughout the roster as it is. They're young, they're rebuilding. There's already question marks over whether Shai is going to be there long term because he's outgrowing the Thunder and everyone's expecting him to be ready to contend before the Thunder are. So coming in as a backup guard to Oklahoma or like playing backup to like Josh Giddey, who I love, he's one of my favorite young guys in the league. That type of role there, or going to somewhere like San Antonio, where there is a little bit like their system is they pick things up from the EuroLeague. They take the best ideas from around Europe and implement them into an NBA style. I think that could be another good fit for him.
Perfect. Well, let's keep talking about EuroBasket then. Dennis Schroder was the number 10 scorer in the tournament. Adam's eyes popped up. He's a former Celtics because he was on the team for about 4 months before he was traded to Houston and hasn't found a job since. Did the Celtics ruin him?
He ruined himself.
Oh, man.
So the thing is, right, and I want to say this, there's a difference between putting up numbers and being a good scorer. There's a difference between getting assists and being a good playmaker. There's a difference between doing all of it and actually being good at basketball. So what I'm saying is, like, Dennis Schroder is a solid player. He can go and get you 15 and 5, 16 and 7 a night, but he's doing it in a way that's detrimental to the team. If you go back and really watch his film, he never rewards a rolling big man. He'll run a pick and roll. The only time he's passing off to the big man is if the defense shuts down the drive. Most of his assists are fool's gold. They come at dump-offs when defense is kind of overload around the rim, and he's got no choice but to get the ball out of his hands. And because a couple of guys have come at him, because he does command that type of attention around the rim, there's an open guy. He's not setting people up. He's bailing himself out. And that was always my biggest problem with Schroder, was it was a very individual-centric style of play that got misconstrued as team-orientated basketball. And I think teams are starting to wise up to that. And then, he goes over to Houston. That doesn't really do much there. Boston, he won them a few games, let's not lie. But overall, they were worse when he was on the floor, and teams notice things like this. And then you have like the questionable personality and the everything that went on in Los Angeles. I don't think that the Celtics ruined him at all. They gave him an opportunity. He didn't succeed in that opportunity as accepting a role as a team-based six man, and now he's struggling to find a place. I'm not a big Dennis Schroder fan. I think he's a solid basketball player, but I think he gets in his own way.
Yeah, but at the same time, I've been watching him in EuroBasket, and you do see a guy who is leading a team against other very good teams and is leading them to wins, and is obviously making winning plays. And so I do think that one thing that happens, and I think back to Carmelo Anthony in 2018, when the Houston Rockets cut him after 10 games, and then he couldn't find a job for a year. That what happens is that everybody assumes that NBA teams all talk to each other and they all know what's going on with each other, and they don't really. So, Carmelo Anthony got cut, and a lot of teams looked at that and said, well, he just can't play anymore. Houston showed. Houston cut him. If he was doing something wrong with Houston, then there's no question that this guy just can't play anymore. And then he came back and he played well enough in Portland and well enough in Los Angeles. He wasn't the old Carmelo Anthony, but he could still play in the NBA. And I think that happens with guys, and I think that's happened with Schroder. Is that the first the Lakers, all the stuff that happened with the Lakers and his contract there. And then you follow that up with the Celtics, and he plays for a few months there, and they trade him to Houston, and he kind of dies on the vine in Houston. That all adds up for other teams to look at that and say, okay, this guy can't play anymore. When he can still play. I mean, come on, he can still contribute. He can still come off a bench and contribute for an NBA team. There's no question in my mind. I just think that that sometimes, the reputation gets hung on a player, more heavily than it does on other players. I don't know why it happens. It just seems like it happens.
Do you not think that some of his play, as a general observation, do you not think some of his play is limiting to his teammates around him?
I think all right. So I think certainly in Boston, I think part of what happened in Boston was he felt like, I'm on a $6 million contract for 1 year. I got to prove myself. I got to go out there and I got to do, way too much. And he tried to do too much, and it just never really fit. There were times, like you said, where he won them a game because he was willing to take it over when nobody else was. And then there were times where he's trying to take over a game that he shouldn't have tried to take over. And I think part of that was because he was in the contract situation that he was, and he wanted to prove himself and get paid the next year. And so that didn't work out. But if you look at the course of his career, obviously there's been personality problems. There's been problems with fit and things like that. But, at the same time, he's done well in other places. I mean, he was, runner-up 6th man of the year a couple years ago, playing for Billy Donovan in Oklahoma City. So, I mean, the guy, he can find a role. I think that the problem is, though, that he's sort of been hung with this reputation. He can't get rid of it. There's no reason that we're sitting here in the middle of September and Dennis Schroder doesn't have a team. You know what I mean? Like, there's no reason that this guy doesn't have a team.
So for me, the reason he was so successful in Oklahoma was because their bench unit didn't have the talent to not need somebody like Dennis Schroder. You know what I'm saying? It was a very specific need for a ball dominant guard that was willing to go into that takeover mode and do what he needed to do to help keep that team level on points or try and put them ahead or get them back into a game. And that's a role that Dennis Schroder is more than equipped to play because he's a very talented scoring guard. But when you're in a team that's more of a contending team, they need you to be more of a role player. That's where my concerns with him as his mentality and his play style start to kind of come into things. And it's kind of on a very smaller scale. It's kind of that Westbrook situation, except Schroder can shoot. So it's very much hey, you need the ball in your hands to be successful. But if we're going to be bringing you off the bench alongside 2 all-stars that are also initiators, we don't really want that ball in your hands. Are you willing to accept that role? And it just feels like Schroder isn't at that point in his career yet where the pennies dropped for him to be actually, this is how I can be an even better version of myself and help myself get a ring.
But when I look back at Schroder, I mean, he played a lot of minutes with Westbrook in Oklahoma City. They played together a lot. They were a closing lineup. He closed games with Russell Westbrook. So I mean, and they weren't a bad team. So I don't know. I find it hard to believe that that the reputation that he has matched what he can actually do on the floor. He can still bring you something on the floor if you give the guy a chance. And it's shocking to me that he hasn't had a chance.
See, he's going to give you buckets and he's going to give you assists. It's just so when I do this thing every time the Celtics sign or trade for a player, I go back and watch every possession on both sides of the floor from the previous season, just so I can get a feel for how that player is performing in the now type of things, or as the closest to the now as I can physically get. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that was kind of that season, the video that I'd watched, and I was I hyper focus on the role I'd envision them playing for Boston. And obviously I'm not always right there. There's areas where they play that I didn't, nobody's perfect, but those areas were pick and roll. And I was he never passes to the big man. But when there was other things like running the fast break. Does he, when he's off ball, does he try and run to the 3-point corner, or does he want to pressure the rim? And he's a great player. He's just, in my opinion, he's not a great team player.
I think
And
he just has a hard time being able to adapt and understand his role wherever he's at, right? I I know that he kind of takes on that hero complex of I got to do and be everything, but when you're not the guy who needs to do and be everything, where do you fit in on that team? And I think that he has a hard time recognizing what his role is if it's not you're the number one guy, go make something happen.
yeah, and I think that as a person, he's a skateboarder. I love people that skateboard. Like I grew up skateboarding. Like I've got an affinity towards him as a person because I'm like, yo, I want to see you shred on a board, dude. Like that, I'm into that. Look, let's do that. But as a basketball player, there's like, if I was part of a rebuilding team, or if I was part of a team that had all the young pieces around me with one star that was just looking for somebody to give me that punch off the bench that could be the difference between me missing out on the playoffs to making the play-in or being a low seed into the playoffs. Dennis Schroder is a guy I'd be very happy to acquire because he'd give you everything you needed. But as a team
Mhm.
like Boston, where it's like, we need that guy off the bench that's going to come in, play within the system, give us some of this, some of that, some of the other. Dennis Schroeder's not that guy. And I think there's enough teams out there that are still rebuilding or are still a few pieces away that Dennis Schroeder makes sense on. But every
Yeah.
team at the minute, when you think of rebuilding teams, there's not as many as there were a few years ago.
No,
No.
right.
Well, speaking of rebuilding teams, Danny Ainge has left the Celtics. We saw him pop up in Utah, where he's just tearing everything down. Everything's gone. A lot of people are comparing it to the 2013 Celtics when he traded away Pierce and Garnett. How do you guys feel like he's doing?
I think the comparison to 2013 is kind of like the easy thing that a lot of people are going to look at. But that was a pretty that wound up being a unique situation because you made these trades, you had the pick swaps, and you had the actual picks coming back to Boston that were. At the time, they didn't necessarily look good, but they looked great in retrospect because Brooklyn was terrible. Like they did not live up to what they were supposed to be, and they very shortly after the Celtics rebuilt in 2013, Brooklyn was rebuilding. So that bolstered the value of the Jayson Tatum pick, the Jaylen Brown, all those things. That's not necessarily going to be the case this time around when you look at Cleveland, who Danny Ainge just made deals with in terms of the Donovan Mitchell trade, and of course the Rudy Gobert trade. Minnesota might be good for a while, and those picks that they've got now, they've got 10 picks. That's pretty good, but at the same time, those we don't know how long. Cleveland's going to be good. We don't know how long Utah is going to be good. If they're good for the next 5-6 years, then those picks aren't going to really matter. They're going to be 20, 23, 28. They're going to be in that range, and that won't be so. So, I mean, there's been this whole focus on the number of picks that Danny Ainge has brought in and comparing it to 2013. But it's not going to matter if Cleveland and Minnesota are good over the next 4 or 5 years, which I think they will be.
I think that it always comes down to, when it comes to draft picks, they're always more valuable until it comes to use them.
Yes.
So everybody, you can sell somebody on a dream. So what you can do when you've got this many picks is you can start packaging them together on a draft night to try and move up in a draft and get a better pick that way, rather than hoping that one or two of them convey. Because you can be like, hey, they're good now, but you never know what's going to happen. Someone could opt out. Anthony Edwards could decide he wants to go play somewhere warm or somewhere named Boston, I wish. And then all of a sudden things change. So while they've got value, while they might not have value as a draft pick themselves, they do have value as in selling somebody a dream, selling somebody. And you just have to know that Danny Ainge is that type of salesman. The downside is everybody expects to get fleeced when they're dealing with Danny Ainge. So he's always operating from a position of distrust, and that might go against him if he's trying to move up in the draft process.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily his fault, right? I mean, it's because, like I said, it's just that's more a Billy King thing. Billy King was the guy he made the deal with Brooklyn, and it was a terrible deal from Brooklyn's end. But that's on Billy King. That's on Danny Ainge. If you're not a moron, then don't make a trade with Danny. I mean, then go ahead and make a trade with Danny Ainge. You'll be fine. You know, I mean, if you're making a good trade with Danny Ainge, then you're not going to get fleeced. There are plenty of teams that have done that, and you know, I mean, like when they traded Ray Allen to Seattle, when they got Ray Allen from Seattle, I mean, they traded back. You know, the number 4 pick, which wound up being Jeff Green. And you know, you can argue whether that was a good pick for Seattle, but they got the number 4 pick. You know, I mean, that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying the narrative's true.
No, right. No, I know.
But like, yeah, for me, it's like the draft picks, as you say, there's no, like, I think Cleveland are going to be quite good this year. All they did was get an upgraded version of Colin Sexton, and they have the defensive infrastructure to hide Mitchell's defensive liabilities. And then you go to Minnesota, they've got the offense. Their biggest issue has been defense. Let's go and get a multi-time defensive player of the year, bang him in the middle of the floor. Logic says it should work. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen, but logic says that this was a good move. So when you're looking at those draft picks, I agree, they're not going to be as valuable as what Brooklyn's were. So you have to start doing hey, well, if we give you 2 or 3 of these, you never know what's going to happen, right?
Yeah, right.
And, you know, and we'll give you this year's pick too, so you're going to still draft a player. Just give us number 1.
Yeah, but you might get an RJ Hunter in there. That's my point, and that's like people forget that some of the picks that they got from Brooklyn, you know, one of them at least was RJ Hunter.
I was so high on James Young for a hot minute.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. James Young. Yeah. James Young was
so high on James.
Was definitely one of those picks. Yeah. I thought he was going to be good.
And Carson Edwards, I was obsessed with Carson Edwards because I was like, the reason his thighs are so like ridiculously big is because the dude explodes like 50 foot off the floor every time he takes a jump shot. He's like a boom. And then obviously it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
So you know, you have the misses, but if you can get 1 or 2 all-star guys, those misses are forgiven because at the end of the day, drafting's not a complete science. You know, you see the draft heads on Twitter every day, all year round, talking about this guy's going to be my number 1 pick, and a year later he's playing in like, I don't know, EuroBasket, like for some really low team in Poland that no one can pronounce. So it's like
the Shanghai Sharks,
yeah. I mean, don't sleep on Jimmer, but yeah. So you know, I think that if you can get 1 or 2 stars, but he's definitely playing a risky game because he's done the best thing you can possibly do. He's got good young players back, plus a bunch of draft assets. So now if Lowry continues to be the Lowry that you saw in Cleveland, you can package Lowry, and I'm not about Lowry Markkinen here. You can package Lowry Markkinen with those picks to go and get somebody better than him, and you just start doing that incremental improvement. Maddie, why are you laughing?
I'm just laughing at how passionate you are about this. Keep going.
I love basketball so much.
We love that you love basketball. Are you guys ready to play a game?
Let's do it.
Not 2K.
Yeah.
We're gonna play Be Brad Stevens.
Be Brad Stevens. All right.
All right. Are you up for the challenge?
I'm going to set you guys up. I have to comb my hair a little tighter, I think.
1 sec.
Everybody get mentally prepared. Oh yeah, here it is. I'm going to set the scene, okay? You're looking at Utah's roster and you want to get in on your old boss's doing. What moves are you going to make? Sean, we'll start with you first.
Oh, I get to go first.
You get to
I'm
go
probably
first.
going to take the one that Adam would have taken, which is I'm trying to get Jared Vanderbilt. I'm trying to get a guy who not a great shooter, but is just kind of a bruiser of a defensive power forward. Makes $4.3 million. You could take him into one of the TPEs. I doubt Utah would just do that. But don't forget, you're dealing with Danny Ainge. And you've got 2 of his most recent draft picks right here on your roster or on your possible payroll sheet with Madar again, as we talked about from Israel. You could certainly offer to include him in the deal. You could offer Peyton Pritchard as well. So you could offer one of those guys, both of those guys for Jared Vanderbilt. To me, if I'm Brad Stevens, that's what I'm going to bring to Danny Ainge, because I would love to get my hands on Jared Vanderbilt. Just a real impressive young defensive power forward.
I really like Vanderbilt.
What happened to the glasses?
I took them off. I really, really like Vanderbilt, and not only because that was one of the first NCAA teams I ever heard of, so I have an affinity there, but I just think he's a solid all-around guy. But I do think that he's going to be one of the harder guys to prize away for that specific reason.
Yeah,
right?
he's 23. Yeah.
Now, if I was going for a forward, which I think the Celtics need, and I'm looking at what they've got, who they've bought in, what's available, I would be inclined to go over to Danny Ainge and be like, Danny, you know how you always said that you loved Marcus Smart and every rebuilding team needs a guy like Marcus Smart? Well, we're not going to give you Marcus Smart because that would be ludicrous, but we'll give you the next best thing. We'll give you a Derek White, and we'll give you a couple of draft picks for your trouble. And in return, you give us Lauri Markkanen, because he was a throw-in in that trade to make the money work, essentially, so you could get Colin Sexton, because, there's belief out there that when given the opportunity, Sexton can give you 60 to 75% of what Donovan Mitchell can. How about it? We'll give you a defensive presence next to Colin who can play the ball, make smart decisions, play defense with a similar mentality to Marcus without the outspokenness and the punchiness. And in return, you give us Lauri Markkanen, and we'll give you a couple of draft picks on top. That would be my first phone call, like right now.
I agree
43
with that.
points. 43 points for Markkanen in his last EuroBasket game. 43 points. So, to bring it back to EuroBasket, man, that was, if you're Danny Ainge, you're looking at that and like, all right, who wants Lowry? Come on, bring on the offers, because 43 points in the EuroBasket, that was pretty impressive.
Derek White plus picks, the money works. Now, obviously, the downside is Derek White's not a young guy. There's no upside there. And the picks are not going to be good because the Celtics are going to be good. Yeah. So it's going to be hard to convince.
We're also running out of picks. We're running out of picks to trade.
Yeah, but Brad Stevens, I've said this. I think I've said this on this show as well. Brad Stevens spent years as a coach watching everybody be like, Danny Ainge can't draft. So Brad is like, well, I'm just not going to draft. And then no one can say a damn thing to me. And then I'll just pick up some guys as second rounders. And if one of them pops, I'm God. And if one of them doesn't, well, there were second rounders, no one cares. So Derek White would be that guy just to make the money work. The only downside is, again, it's going to be really hard to convince Danny Ainge to do it. But at the same time, if maybe he likes Pritchard. I mean, he drafted Pritchard, spoke very highly of Pritchard. Can you use Pritchard as a throw-in? You have enough depth at the guard position to do so. And that could be a guy like Danny Ainge was very high on Peyton Pritchard as just a pace setter, a winning mentality type guy that had limitless range. And if you go there, but then do you really want to acquire another two guards in the deal? Like it gets weird. But if I can get Lauri Markkanen, I'll just be like, Danny, do me a solid, bro. You don't need all this.
Do me a solid, bro.
Yeah, just do it for me, bro.
Sure, that's exactly how Brad's going to sound too.
That's how I'd sound.
All right. Well, that wraps up the show for us today. Please follow us on YouTube, subscribe, follow us wherever you get your podcasts, rate, review, and share with a friend. Be a fun person. Share the love. All right.